My Olympic coach was secretly drugging me the shocking truth that nearly killed me. I should have known something was wrong when I started seeing spots during practice, but when you're 17 and chasing Olympic dreams, you ignore a lot of warning signs. My name is Alex, and for the past 5 years, I've been living what most people would call the perfect athletic life. Nationally ranked backstroker, full scholarship to Stanford waiting for me, and Coach Rob Davidson telling everyone I was his next Olympic champion. The Davidson Aquatic Academy was like swimming royalty, you know, the kind of place where parents mortgage their houses just to get their kids a tryout. I remember the exact moment I realized my body was betraying me. It was a Tuesday morning in March, and I was crushing my usual 50-meter backstroke intervals when my heart decided to throw its own private rave in my chest. The pool deck started spinning, and I grabbed the lane rope so hard I probably left fingerprints in the plastic. Coach Davidson was there immediately, his weathered face creased with what I thought was genuine concern. "Just push through it, champ," he said, that trademark grin spreading across his face. Champions don't quit when it gets uncomfortable. That was Coach Davidson in a nutshell, always pushing us beyond what seemed possible. He'd been my coach since I was 12, back when I was just another skinny kid who happened to be fast in the water. He took me from local swim meets to national championships, from dreaming about college scholarships to actually having Stanford coaches call my house. The thing about Coach Davidson was that he made you feel special, like you were part of something bigger than yourself. The Davidson Aquatic Academy wasn't just a swim club, it was a dynasty. The walls were covered with photos of his athletes winning major competitions, getting college scholarships, making national teams. He had this way of making you believe that if you just trusted him completely, followed his program exactly, you could be up there with them. "Alex, you're different from the other kids," he told me during one of our private coaching sessions when I was 15. "You have that killer instinct, that willingness to do whatever it takes. That's why I'm investing so much time in you." Those private sessions became a regular thing. While the other swimmers did their normal training, Coach Davidson would work with me separately, focusing on technique refinements and what he called advanced performance optimization. He'd give me these special vitamin supplements, custom-made just for me, explaining that elite athletes needed elite nutrition. "These aren't available to the general public," he'd say, handing me the unmarked bottles. "I have connections from my Olympic days that most coaches don't have access to. This is what separates good swimmers from great ones." I felt so privileged, so chosen. The supplements tasted awful, this bitter metallic flavor that made me gag the first few times, but Coach Davidson assured me that meant they were working. If it was easy and tasted good, everyone would be doing it, he'd joke. The results were undeniable. My times dropped dramatically. I went from being a solid regional swimmer to breaking national age group records. College scouts started showing up to my meets. My parents were beside themselves with pride, talking about their daughter, the future Olympian, at every family gathering. But with the success came these weird side effects that I kept trying to rationalize away. My heart would race at random times, not just during intense training. I'd have these mood swings that came out of nowhere, going from euphoric confidence to crushing anxiety within hours. My appetite became erratic, and I started losing weight even though I was eating constantly. "It's just the pressure of high-level competition," my mom would say when I mentioned feeling weird. Elite athletes always have to deal with stress differently than normal people. Coach Davidson was even more dismissive. "Mental toughness is half the battle, Alex. Champions learn to push through discomfort." Michael Phelps didn't become the greatest swimmer of all time by complaining about feeling tired. So I pushed through. I trusted him completely, the way you trust someone who's dedicated their entire professional life to making you successful. When I made the Olympic trials qualifying time in the 200 backstroke, Coach Davidson threw this huge celebration at the Aquatic Center. All the parents came, local media showed up, and everyone kept talking about how this was just the beginning of something amazing. "This is what happens when natural talent meets proper coaching," he announced to the crowd, his arm around my shoulders. "Alex represents everything the Davidson Aquatic Academy stands for, unwavering commitment to excellence." I felt like I was on top of the world, but my body was sending increasingly urgent distress signals that I kept ignoring. The first real scare happened during a training camp in Colorado Springs in late April. We were doing altitude training, which Coach Davidson said would give me an edge when we got back to sea level. I was in the middle of a pace set when my vision went completely white and I found myself underwater with no memory of how I got there. Jamie Martinez, one of the other Davidson swimmers, pulled me out of the pool. She was this quiet girl from Texas who'd been training with Coach Davidson for about 2 years, and she had this look in her eyes like she'd seen this before. "You okay?" she asked, but there was something in her tone that suggested she already knew the answer. Coach Davidson rushed over, all concerned Coach energy. "Altitude sickness," he declared immediately. "Happens to the best of them. We'll adjust your supplement dosage to compensate." But Jamie caught my eye when he wasn't looking and shook her head almost imperceptibly. That tiny gesture planted the first real seed of doubt in my mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. My heart was doing this irregular flutter thing that felt like a butterfly having a seizure in my chest. I found Jamie sitting by herself in the hotel lobby, staring out at the mountains. "Can I ask you something?" I said, sitting down next to her. "Sure. Have you ever had weird heart stuff during training?" She was quiet for a long time, and I thought maybe she hadn't heard me. Then she turned and looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before, like she was trying to decide whether to tell me something that could change everything. "Alex, how long have you been on the special supplements?" "About 3 years." "Why?" She nodded slowly, like that confirmed something she'd been thinking. "Have you ever wondered why only certain swimmers get them? Why Coach Davidson is so secretive about what's in them?" I hadn't really thought about it. I'd been so focused on my improving times and the scholarship offers that I'd never questioned the process. He said they were expensive and not everyone needed that level of supplementation. Jamie laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Right. And have you noticed that the swimmers on the supplements are the ones getting all the attention? The ones with the biggest time drops?" Now she had my full attention. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we should start asking more questions." The next morning, Coach Davidson pulled me aside for one of our private talks. He had this way of reading people, and I think he sensed that something had shifted in my attitude. "Alex, I need to talk to you about something important," he said, his voice taking on that serious tone he used when discussing race strategy. "I've been getting some interest from pharmaceutical companies about your training methods and supplement response. They're willing to pay significant money for data on how elite young athletes respond to advanced nutrition protocols." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "What kind of data?" "Nothing invasive, just regular blood work, performance metrics, that kind of thing. The money could help fund your training through the Olympics and beyond. We're talking about potentially $50,000 just for participating in their research study." $50,000 was more money than my family had ever seen at one time. My parents had already taken out a second mortgage to pay for my training and travel expenses. The financial pressure was something we never talked about directly, but I knew every meet entry fee and coaching session was a strain. What would I have to do? Just keep doing exactly what you're doing. Take your supplements, train hard, and let them monitor your progress. Easy money, and it helps advance sports science for future generations of athletes. Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl, but I couldn't put my finger on why. "Can I think about it?" His smile got a little tighter. "Of course, but they need an answer soon. Opportunities like this don't come around often, especially for swimmers your age." That afternoon, Jamie approached me again. "We need to talk, but not here. Meet me at the coffee shop down the street after dinner." I spent the rest of the day in a weird mental fog, going through the motions of training while my mind raced with questions I'd never allowed myself to ask before. During the warm-up, I noticed things I'd somehow missed before, like how Coach Davidson only gave the unmarked supplement bottles to certain swimmers, always the ones who'd had the most dramatic improvements. I noticed how he'd watch us take them, making sure we swallowed every pill. At the coffee shop, Jamie and I found a corner table away from other customers. She looked around nervously before pulling out her phone. "I'm going to show you something, but you have to promise me you won't freak out or do anything stupid." I nodded, though I had no idea what I was agreeing to. She showed me a series of text messages between her and another Davidson swimmer named Marcus, who'd been hospitalized the previous month with what Coach Davidson had called overtraining syndrome. The texts painted a very different picture. "Doctor says my heart rate is dangerously elevated even at rest," Marcus had written. They want to know what supplements I've been taking, but I don't even know what's in them. Coach Davidson just says trust the process. Same weird heart stuff happening to Alex now, Jamie had replied. Starting to think we need to figure out what's really in those pills. I tried to get them tested, but Coach Davidson collects the empty bottles. Says it's for reordering purposes. My hands were shaking as I read through the conversation. How many swimmers have had problems? That I know of? At least 5 in the past 2 years. Marcus, Sarah Chen, Kevin Rodriguez, and 2 others who transferred to different clubs after getting sick. Why didn't anyone report this? Jamie gave me a look that made me feel incredibly naive. Report what, exactly? That a respected Olympic coach is giving supplements to elite athletes? That some of us have had health issues that could easily be explained by intense training? You think anyone would believe us over Rob Davidson? She had a point. Coach Davidson wasn't just any swim coach, he was a local legend. Former Olympian, coach of national champions, the kind of guy who got profiled in swimming magazines and spoke at coaching clinics. Who are we compared to that kind of reputation? But if something's really wrong, I started. Then we need proof, Jamie interrupted. Real proof that can't be dismissed or explained away. That night, I lay in bed thinking about everything I thought I knew about my swimming career. Every PR, every college scholarship offer, every moment of pride my parents had experienced watching me succeed, was it all built on something illegal? Something dangerous? The next morning, I made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. Instead of taking my usual supplements, I palmed the pills and pretended to swallow them, flushing them down the toilet when no one was looking. I did this for 3 days, wanting to see if I'd notice any difference. By the 3rd day, the constant background anxiety I'd grown accustomed to started to fade. My heart rate felt more normal. I was sleeping better. But my training time suffered immediately. Without whatever had been enhancing my performance, I was noticeably slower in the water. Coach Davidson noticed right away. Alex, what's going on with your stroke rate today? You look sluggish out there. Just feeling a little tired, I guess. He steadied me for a moment, and I got the distinct impression he was seeing right through my lie. Are you taking your supplements consistently? Sometimes when athletes get nervous about big competitions, they start making changes to their routine. Of course I'm taking them. Good, because everything we've worked for is riding on the next few months. Trials are in 8 weeks, and there's no room for inconsistency. That afternoon, he made me take the supplements in front of him, watching carefully as I swallowed each pill. The bitter metallic taste seemed even more pronounced now that I was paying attention to it, and within an hour I felt that familiar surge of artificial energy flooding my system. I knew then that Jamie was right. We needed proof. The opportunity came during a team meeting the following week. Coach Davidson was giving one of his motivational speeches about sacrifice and dedication when he mentioned something that made my blood run cold. Some of you have been asking questions about your supplement protocols, he said, his eyes scanning the room. Let me be very clear, the advanced nutritional support I provide is based on decades of experience at the highest levels of competition. When I was competing for Team USA in the 1990s, I learned things about performance optimization that most coaches never get access to. He paused, and for just a moment, his confident mask slipped. I saw something in his expression that looked almost like guilt, or maybe fear. Trust the process, trust your coach, and keep your mouth shut about the details. The moment you start second-guessing a proven system is the moment you lose your competitive edge. After the meeting, I pulled out my phone and started researching Coach Davidson's Olympic career. It took some digging through old news archives, but I eventually found what I was looking for in a 1996 article from the Olympic coverage. American swimmer Rob Davidson stripped of Olympic medals following positive doping test results. Davidson, who won silver in the 200 backstroke and bronze in the medley relay, tested positive for multiple performance-enhancing substances including EPO and anabolic steroids. Davidson denied knowingly taking banned substances but was unable to provide satisfactory explanation for the positive tests. I read the article 3 times, my hands shaking more with each read-through. The man who'd been my coach and mentor for 5 years, who'd built his entire reputation on producing clean, dedicated athletes, was himself a convicted doper. But the article was from 1996. Coach Davidson's official biography on the Aquatic Center website said he'd won those medals and never mentioned them being stripped. He'd built his entire coaching career on a lie, and somehow no one had ever called him on it. I screencapped the article and sent it to Jamie immediately. Her response was just 2 words: "Holy shit." We met again that evening, this time at a park where we could be sure no one would overhear us. Jamie had done her own research and found even more disturbing information. "It gets worse," she said, showing me her phone. I found records of 3 other coaches who worked with him in the past decade. All of them were eventually fired or forced to resign after doping scandals involving underage athletes. How is he still coaching? Because he's good at covering his tracks. Look at this. She showed me a news article from 2018 about a swim club in Arizona where Davidson had briefly worked. 2 swimmers had tested positive for banned substances, but the investigation concluded that they'd obtained the drugs independently, without their coach's knowledge. Davidson had left the position shortly after, citing philosophical differences with club management. 3 different clubs, same pattern every time, Jamie explained. Young athletes showing dramatic improvement, then getting caught or getting sick. He moves on before anyone can connect the dots. I felt sick to my stomach, not just from the betrayal, but from the realization that I'd been part of this pattern. How many rules had I unknowingly broken? How many competitors had I defeated unfairly? "We have to stop him," I said. "I know, but we need more than just old news articles. We need physical evidence." The next day, I volunteered to help Coach Davidson reorganize the supplement storage room. He seemed pleased by my initiative, which made me feel even more guilty about my real motives. While he was distracted with paperwork, I managed to palm one of the unmarked bottles and slip it into my backpack. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he'd hear it, but he just kept talking about upcoming meet schedules like nothing had happened. That evening, I called my Uncle David, who worked as a toxicologist for the state health department. I'd always been close to him growing up, and I knew he'd help me without asking too many questions. "Hey kiddo, what's up?" "Uncle David, I need a favor, and I need you to not tell my parents about it yet." There was a pause. "Are you in some kind of trouble?" "Maybe. I need you to test something for me, find out what's really in it." Another pause, longer this time. "Alex, what exactly are we talking about here?" I took a deep breath and told him everything. The supplements, the heart palpitations, Coach Davidson's hidden history, the pattern of sick athletes. By the time I finished, he was completely silent. "Jesus Christ, Alex. How long have you been taking these things?" 3 years. "Okay, listen to me very carefully. I want you to bring me samples of everything he's given you, and I want you to stop taking them immediately. Can you do that?" "I already stopped a few days ago, but he's making sure I take them now. He's watching me." "Then fake it. Palm them, hide them, whatever you have to do, but don't put any more of that stuff in your body until we know what it is." 2 days later, Uncle David called me back with results that confirmed my worst fears. "Alex, these pills contain a cocktail of performance-enhancing drugs that should never be given to anyone, especially not a minor. EPO, low-dose anabolic steroids, stimulants that are banned by every major sports organization in the world." I felt like the ground was disappearing beneath me. What does this mean for my health? Short term, you'll probably be fine if you stop taking them now. Long term, this stuff can cause serious cardiovascular problems, liver damage, hormonal disruption. The fact that you've been experiencing heart palpitations is extremely concerning. What about my swimming career? My scholarship? Uncle David was quiet for a moment. "Honey, I know this isn't what you want to hear, but if you test positive for any of these substances, you'll be banned from competition for years. Your scholarship, your Olympic dreams, all of that could be over." The room started spinning. Everything I'd worked for, everything my parents had sacrificed for, was potentially ruined. But even as I was panicking about my future, another thought occurred to me. "Uncle David, how many other kids might be going through this right now?" That's exactly what I was thinking. "Alex, we need to report this, but we need to be smart about how we do it. This isn't just about you anymore." Over the next week, Jamie and I carefully documented everything we could. We recorded Coach Davidson's supplement distribution process with hidden phone cameras, collected testimonies from other swimmers who had experienced health problems, and gathered as much evidence as we could about his real Olympic history. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal during practice. Coach Davidson kept praising my dedication and talking about my bright future, while I knew I was building a case that would destroy him. "Alex, I've got some exciting news," he announced after practice one Thursday. "I just got off the phone with some major sponsors who are interested in supporting your Olympic preparation. They want to feature you in their marketing campaigns, potentially worth hundreds of thousands of dollars." I forced a smile. "That's amazing, Coach." "It is, but it means we need to be extra careful about your training and supplementation. These sponsors are investing in results, and we can't let them down." The way he said it felt like a threat disguised as an opportunity. That weekend, Uncle David helped me contact the right authorities. We reached out to USADA, the anti-doping agency, USA Swimming Safe Sport Program, and the FBI's Public Corruption Unit all simultaneously. We wanted to make sure that even if one agency dropped the ball, others would follow through. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 48 hours, I was sitting in a conference room with federal agents, anti-doping officials, and prosecutors, telling my story while they recorded every word. "Ms. Martinez, we want you to know how brave you're being," said Agent Thompson from the FBI. "Cases like this are difficult to prosecute because the victims are often afraid to come forward. What happens next? We're going to need you to continue training normally while we build our case. I know that's asking a lot, but we need to catch him in the act of distributing these substances." The next few weeks were the most stressful of my life. I had to keep taking the illegal supplements while wearing a wire, pretending to be grateful for Coach Davidson's guidance while secretly working to expose him. The breakthrough came when Coach Davidson arranged a meeting with representatives from the pharmaceutical company he'd mentioned. He wanted me to sign a consent form allowing them to monitor my response to what he called experimental sports nutrition protocols. I sat in that meeting, listening to these people in expensive suits talk about using teenage athletes as test subjects for performance-enhancing drugs they were developing, and I realized the scope of what we were dealing with was far beyond what I'd imagined. The data we collect from Alex and other young athletes will be invaluable for our research into optimizing human performance, one of the pharmaceutical reps explained. "The fact that she's been responding so well to our compounds makes her an ideal candidate for expanded testing." Coach Davidson nodded enthusiastically. "Alex understands the importance of advancing sports science. She's committed to being part of something bigger than herself." They were talking about me like I was a lab rat, not a human being. The recording equipment picked up everything. 3 days later, the FBI executed search warrants at the Davidson Aquatic Academy, Coach Davidson's home, and the pharmaceutical company's offices simultaneously. I was at school when it happened, but Jamie texted me updates throughout the day. "Feds are carrying out boxes of stuff. Local news trucks showing up. Holy shit, they arrested him." I went home that afternoon to find my parents sitting at the kitchen table with Uncle David, all of them looking shell-shocked. "Sweetie, we need to talk," my mom said. I'd been dreading this conversation, but I was also relieved that the secret was finally out. "I know you're probably angry with me," I started. "Angry?" My dad looked confused. "Honey, we're proud of you. What you did took incredible courage." It turned out Uncle David had filled them in on everything while respecting my request to let me control how much they knew. They were horrified by what had been happening, but also amazed that I'd had the strength to expose it. "Your coach betrayed your trust in the worst possible way," my mom said, tears in her eyes. "We trusted him with our daughter's safety, and he put your health at risk for his own benefit." The news coverage was intense. Coach Rob Davidson, former Olympic medalist and renowned swim coach, arrested on charges of child endangerment, drug trafficking, and conspiracy to distribute performance-enhancing drugs to minors. The story made national headlines, and suddenly everyone wanted to interview the teenage swimmer who brought down a coaching dynasty. I testified before a congressional subcommittee on youth sports safety, my voice shaking as I described what it felt like to discover that my athletic success had been artificially enhanced. The hearing room was packed with media and other victims who'd found the courage to come forward after seeing our story. No young athlete should have to choose between their dreams and their health, I told the committee. Coaches hold enormous power over young people's lives, and when they abuse that power, the consequences can be devastating. The legal consequences for Coach Davidson were severe. He was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for drug trafficking and child endangerment. The pharmaceutical company faced massive fines and criminal charges. Several other coaches who'd been part of the network were also arrested. But the personal consequences for me were more complicated. My body went through a difficult detox process as the performance-enhancing drugs left my system. My training time suffered dramatically, and I had to face the reality that much of my previous success had been artificial. Stanford honored my scholarship, but I had to defer enrollment for a year while I rebuilt my fitness and dealt with the legal proceedings. The hardest part was wondering what I might have accomplished if I'd been clean from the beginning. Were my natural abilities enough to compete at the elite level? Would I have been fast enough to earn a college scholarship on my own merit? I decided to find out. I spent the next year training with a new coach who specialized in helping athletes transition away from performance-enhancing drugs. It was humbling and sometimes discouraging, but gradually I started to see improvement that I knew was entirely my own. My heart rate normalized. The anxiety and mood swings disappeared. I slept better, ate normally, and generally felt healthier than I had in years. More importantly, I started to enjoy swimming again in a way I'd forgotten was possible. Without the pressure of maintaining artificially enhanced performance levels, I could focus on technique, strategy, and the pure joy of moving efficiently through water. 8 months after Coach Davidson's arrest, I competed in my first major meet as a clean athlete. My time in the 200 backstroke was 6 seconds slower than my previous personal best, but it was entirely mine. I still made the Olympic trials qualifying standard. Standing on the blocks before that race, I felt a different kind of nervousness than I'd experienced in years. This was pure competitive anxiety, not the chemical-induced jitters I'd grown accustomed to. When I dove in, every stroke was powered by my own muscles, every breath was drawn by my own lungs, every tactical decision was made by my own clear mind. I finished 4th at trials, missing the Olympic team by less than a second. A year earlier, that result would have devastated me. Instead, I felt proud. I'd competed against the best swimmers in the country using nothing but my natural ability, proper training, and determination. Stanford welcomed me that fall with open arms. The swimming program there had followed my story closely, and they were eager to support an athlete who'd shown such integrity under pressure. I'm now a sophomore, majoring in biochemistry with plans to go into sports medicine. I want to help develop better drug testing methods and education programs to prevent other young athletes from going through what I experienced. I still compete for the Stanford swim team, and my times continue to improve steadily. I may never be as fast as I was on performance-enhancing drugs, but every PR I set now feels authentic in a way that my previous achievements never did. The congressional hearing led to new federal legislation requiring more oversight of youth sports programs and mandatory education about performance-enhancing drugs for all coaches working with minors. The law is informally known as the Davidson Act, though I wish it had a different name. Jamie transferred to a different club and is now swimming for USC. We stay in touch, and she often says that exposing Coach Davidson was the best decision we ever made, even though it was terrifying at the time. Marcus, the swimmer who'd been hospitalized, made a full recovery and is now coaching young swimmers himself, with a focus on teaching them about the importance of clean competition. As for Coach Davidson, he's currently serving his sentence in federal prison. I heard through news reports that he's appealing his conviction, claiming he was only trying to help young athletes reach their potential. That makes me angry in a way that's hard to describe, because even now he doesn't seem to understand the harm he caused. Sometimes I wonder what my swimming career would have looked like if I'd never met him, if I'd developed my abilities naturally from the beginning. Would I have been fast enough to earn a scholarship? Would I have made national teams? Would I have been happier? I'll never know the answers to those questions, but I've made peace with that uncertainty. What I do know is that the swimmer I am today is completely authentic. My training times, my race results, my college scholarship, my future goals, they're all built on a foundation of honest effort and natural ability. That feels infinitely more valuable than any artificially enhanced success could have been. When I speak at youth sports events now, I always tell young athletes the same thing: trust your coaches, but also trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, if your body is sending you warning signals, if you're being asked to keep secrets about your training, speak up. Ask questions. Don't let anyone convince you that success requires compromising your health or your values. The road to athletic excellence should be challenging, but it should never be dangerous. Looking back now, I realize that the real victory wasn't making the Olympic trials or earning a college scholarship. The real victory was finding the courage to choose my long-term health and integrity over short-term competitive success, even when that choice threatened everything I thought I wanted. That's a lesson that extends far beyond swimming, far beyond sports. Sometimes doing the right thing requires sacrificing immediate benefits for long-term principles, and that's never easy, especially when you're 17 years old and your dreams feel like they're hanging in the balance. But integrity is like muscle memory in the water. Once you develop it, it becomes part of who you are in ways that no one can take away from you. And that's worth more than any medal.